Hello, everyone. First of all, how is everyone doing? Okay. Um, we're thinking of Luang Por Sumedho with obviously great gratitude, and I was just reflecting on what Ajahn Chah um, what Ajahn Chah said when he was asked how old he was. He said, "I have no age," because when you think you're born, it's already a problem. I'm sure Ajahn Sumedho would answer similar, because Luang Por Sumedho's emphasis is always on the unconditioned, the deathless, the unborn. And there's lots in Buddhism which talks about rebirth and that we are all brothers and sisters in a past lifetime. But notice Luang Por never talks that way. He never goes to that Buddhist conceptual structure of rebirth. He always takes us to the unconditioned. And to me, that's the hallmark of his um, brilliance in always presenting and reminding us of that. Um, so the way I like to do that reminder is, those of you who've practiced with me, to use that metaphor of foreground and background. So I'll do that. We'll meditate for half an hour and then we'll see where this session goes. So please set yourself up for meditation. I'll set my week clock. So settle into the moment, listen to sound. To listen to sound, you have to stop thinking. Let the sounds come to you. Notice the changing nature of sound. Notice the unchanging awareness. You can't notice awareness as an object, but you can be aware. Notice the changing nature of sound. And then there's the silence of awareness. And be that awareness. Feel the breathing of your body. Just let the body be felt, be known, be conscious, breathing in, breathing out. Not a hard focus. Notice the changing nature of breath. Awareness is unchanging. Notice the changing nature of bodily feelings and breath. Awareness is unchanging. Move between the two. Listen to sound. Feel the body. They're both changing. What is unchanging? Be that awareness. Listen to sound. Sound is the foreground of change. Background is the knowing or the awareness. Be the background. Feel the body. Bodily feelings are changing. Awareness, background. Be the background. So you're not trying to become anything. You're just remembering that the foreground changes, the background is peaceful and silent. Be that background. Be the knowing, be aware. Make that awareness very open and welcoming. So welcome all conditions. Let them come, let them go. You're like the silent witness. So non-becoming. We're not trying to get anywhere. Non-resistance, acceptance of whatever. Clear knowing, it's like this. So then if we use Luang Por's brilliant words, when you get entangled in time and memory, you notice that, just say it's like this. But then come to that silence. Notice change. Don't try to get something, just notice change. It's like this. Okay, so let's sit quietly and meditate quietly. Bodily feelings are in awareness. Awareness is conscious space. Body comes and goes in awareness. Sound is in awareness. Thoughts are in awareness. Emotions are in awareness. Just trust in that. Notice how a thought ends in awareness. Awareness is there. Rather than trying to get rid of thinking, notice the thinking gets interrupted by a pain in the leg, a sound, and you're there. And notice that thought is an object. Awareness is the background. If you get all tangled in planning and worrying and such like, the moment that's interrupted, then go back to sound. Just listen. And then notice the changing nature of sound. And that awareness knows change. Return. It's a very simple model, practice. And then trust in that knowing of change. Of course, you have to do it again and again. Return to that simple understanding. So the knowing isn't conceptual. It's not like making a comment about, oh, it's all changing. It's not that. It's the silence of witnessing.
Well, thank you. Hope you're well.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Luang Por will now like to request for the Dhamma.
Please, yeah.
The Brahma God Sahampati, Lord of the world, with palms joined in reverence, requested a favor. Beings are here with but little dust in their eyes. Pray, teach the Dhamma out of compassion for them. Brahmacaloka Tipati Sahampati Katanjaliyan Tiwarangaya Jatha Santi Tasatha Parajaka Jatika Dese tu Dhammang Anukam Imam Pajan.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Hello everyone, namaste. Hope you're well. So we are reflecting, celebrating, remembering, expressing gratitude for Luang Por Sumedho's life on his 90th birthday. And I was, as I was saying, I think if you asked him, how old are you? He said, I have no age. Body has age. And to me, that's been central for my relationship to him as a teacher, because even in Nana Chat's early days, years ago, he was always using those phrases. There's the unconditioned, the uncreated, the unoriginated, the unformed, the deathless. And I was always pointing to why we became monks, we ordained for the sake of the realization of Nibbana. Luang Por Cha as well said, once you think you're born, it's already a problem. And that's a pretty radical way of thinking. And if it's taken shallowly, it just seems kind of ridiculous, because there is the body. A 90-year-old body is not a 50-year-old body, and there is still the karma of a body, and there's still the experience. But one of the things about Luang Por's, many things about Luang Por's teaching was never about opinions. There's always something you could reflect on and look in your own mind. It wasn't something you had to believe. So it was never about who was reborn where, or what rebirth was like, and who had powers, and this kind of talk that was sort of like Buddhist gossip, I suppose, that around. And he was never interested in that. I wasn't interested in that either. But I was interested in the language of the uncreated, because that seemed to me the whole purpose of this teaching. And the kind of thrust of his teaching was always that. And So now as we like in the mornings, we're reading Rupa's book, Don't Take Your Life Personally. It's just brilliant. He just nails it. He's just so good. Um, and yet the themes are always the same. It's like this. And what he does for me with that, that brings me to silence. Because it's not an opinion, it's not something I have to believe, it's something I have to remember to engage, that language of it's like this. But it's not just a sort of facile statement, oh, life is like this. No, it's much, much more than that. It's the silence after that statement. It's the noticing of change. Because like anicca sanya, the perception of change in the practices of mindfulness, it's not a Buddhist position. Because we do that as Buddhists. We do the Buddhist thing. We say, oh, yeah, it's all changing. The weather's changing. But it doesn't take a Buddha to realize that. But actually to have enough attention on, let's say, an emotion and say the emotion feels like this, like anxiety, let's say. If you feel anxiety, you have enough trust, as Luang Por has been teaching us, enough trust and awareness to say, awareness is like, anxiety is like this. Then there's the silence and the knowing of the unpleasantness of the anxiety, of the feeling, of the thoughts. That's different than just saying, oh, anxiety will change. Don't worry about it, darling. You'll be okay. That's not it. It will change, but it's much, much more profound than that. And to trust in that, and to trust in that this experience of worry or fear or sadness or grief arises because it causes some conditions, and we know that. We have that teaching all the time, but this sense of really knowing change, knowing it not intellectually, but experientially. So that's why I like for myself, my own practice, I like this foreground background analogy. Very simple way for me to touch the silence of the background, the witnessing, the awareness, whatever you want to call it. And then there's the changing nature of the foreground. So I find that a very easy and simple entryway. But then sustaining that, that's a whole other ballgame. And even though I kind of understood that early on, my own karmic conditioning was very strong, where I get caught up in the foreground of emotions and all the rest of it. And we're all the same that way. We're all that way. But if we don't get that basic understanding, then we're always just trying to get the objects right. And you can get them a little bit right, but that's not really what transcendence is about. That's what worldly things are. So we do good things. We live good lives. We practice Dhamma. We take care of our elders. We care for our spaces. We care for the water and the trees, and we brush our teeth. We do all of that. That's all very, very important. Because if we didn't do that, it would just be chaos around us. So that's the sort of foundation of our social lives. And as a bhikkhu, I'm so grateful for this social structure that I live in. But I didn't ordain just to be a bhikkhu, just have this kind of identity or this kind of cool lifestyle or not cool lifestyle, but rather to use it as a vehicle for the liberation from suffering and to understand what this pointing to the unconditioned, what that's about. Now, Luang Por's teaching also has a grounding in his own diligence. And he's really an awesome practitioner in so many ways, in so many levels of his own being. And I was thinking, like to offer to wish Luang Por happy birthday. What might we do? We're going to offer him flowers. That's sweet. But why don't we offer something serious, like your life? Because when Luang Por Sumedho went to Tudong in India, he had been a disciple for 5 years, so he was a Majjhima, a monk, and he could go and look at other monasteries. And you probably all know the story. And he did Tudong in India. And towards the end of that year in India, he said, "What am I doing? What am I doing? I think I want to go back to Luang Por and offer my life to him." That's And he knew what he was getting into. He was getting into a lot of complexity, because he had already dealt with a lot of Westerners and they were complex beings, as I know. And he wasn't kind of taking something on that's going to be easy. He knew it would be difficult, but he gave his, he really gave his life, a life to Luang Por and developed from there. So what might we give Luang Por? Well, if you were to emulate his yoga practice, he never taught yoga, interestingly enough, but I saw him do some back bends and splits and things which were just stunning. I mean, how can you be so flexible? And he was very quiet about it, but he was very, very diligent, very, very diligent. So if you want to make an offering to Luang Por, if you have a yoga practice, if you have a Tai Chi practice, if you have a Qigong practice, if you would anything like that, then strengthen it. Like for Luang Por, I'm going to make this a serious thing. I'm gonna stay with that good practices that I already have, with the yoga that I already do, the Qigong I already do, the Tai Chi I already do. I'm going to keep with those for a long, long time. That'd be a nice offering, but very good for you too. Very, very good. Very good thing to do. And that takes diligence. That takes a determination. But it's not the determination to become anything. So his determination wasn't to become anything, but it was to maintain very strong energy practices, a very strong grounded practices. You do that. What else might you do? Well, Luang Por, he did his studies. He's well grounded in the text, but what he did, as we all know, he took the Four Noble Truths and he just kept working on that for a lifetime. So that's an interesting one where you take some basic framework from our tradition and you keep working it over. You keep reflecting on it, looking at different angles of it. And he's always taught from that, but it's always so profound, isn't it? It's the same Four Noble Truths. So that's different than just doing sutta study. You can do sutta study after sutta study after sutta study and gain more and more information, but then usually that becomes encyclopedic and a kind of information collecting, which is fine, But sometimes I think people can fool themselves to think because you have a lot of concepts about Buddhism, you have actually, you've understood it. I think you have to take something quite basic, Anicca Dukkha Anatta, Four Noble Truths, and really work with it, really, really deep in it. That's profoundly rewarding, So there's that. You could offer your reflective capacities, your ability, your intelligence to constantly reflect on Dhamma, not take views and opinions, but reflect on Dhamma. And Luang Por has been so, to me, so brilliant on things like doubt. It's one of the most important things from his teaching that I've taken on is that to see doubt as an object rather than be the doubting subject. To me, that's incredibly profound because my thinking mind can doubt and then look for an answer, doubt, look for an answer, doubt, look for an answer, doubt, look for an answer, ad nauseum, ad infinitum. But actually to see doubt as an object, this is a condition that comes and goes. And then there's the background of knowing. There's the awareness, which is not an opinion, which just knows doubt is doubt. That was so liberating for me. I would forget it. I would get caught in doubts, but then, oh no, that's just doubt. Doubt feels this way. So that reflective mind that Luang Por has, and it is so keen and so interesting. We could offer that, to use the reflective mind more and use less of the believing mind, the opinionated mind, that kind of thing. Luang Por is a very sincere man. I think we're all amazed at how honest he is about his own troubles. It's embarrassing sometimes the stuff he talks about in his own heart, isn't it? I mean, really? And yet he's so very honest. He's so honest. Yeah, I did this and I have these kinds of states in mind and it's embarrassing and wow, he's so honest. So what is sincerity? Well, sincerity is not being two-faced, I suppose. Some people can be nice to this person, but not nice to that person, kind of cynical. Luang Por, he's a really sincere man, very sincere. So what's sincerity? And that sincerity to me is such a part of me, the sense of truthfulness, really being honest, not in a kind of self-critical way, but just awakening to one's inner world and taking responsibility for one's suffering or whatever it might be. Luang Por also, he grounded his practice in very real things. So he did lots of pranayama, lots of breathing exercises, but as you all know, latterly, well, not latterly, actually, probably in 1977, he started to do it more diligently. He used the sound of silence. And that's an interesting part of his monastic life, is that he found a thing, kind of a thing, the sound of silence, and he just used that because that brought him to emptiness, to non-attachment, to non-grasping. He figured that out, and then he used it very, very diligently, very, very diligently. So do you have something like that? Do you have something that reminds you of the background? Now, it could be the breath. You could observe the breath back and in and out, but you're not grasping or focusing on the breath. You're realizing there's the background which knows change. So that's one way to do it. You feel, you get a feeling for the silence of awareness, the silence of witnessing. You have to get a kind of taste for that, the inspiration for that. Once you get that, then you start to find objects, sound of silence, out breath, something like that. But then the objects are just the changing thing. And your reference is the silence. So in this little meditation that we did, I suggested, notice the movement of breath. I wasn't asking for a hard focus on some part of it. Just notice movement. And what is it that knows that? So if you have something that grounds you like that, then you start to combine both. You have an object, in this case, breath, sound of silence, but your reference, it's not about the breath or the sound, it's about silent witnessing again and again, and you trust in that. So for myself, I use the heart. I find that the most interesting and compelling kind of inquiry into my own being. So then I constantly use that. Oh, there's that, and there's the sound of silence, there's the silence, there's the space. And recently I've been talking with people who I've been kind of joking with the idea of a broken heart. And what I've been contemplating a lot is remorse and relationships, and how we hurt each other, how through inadvertently, through words and actions, we can very often hurt the person very closest to us. And it's a part of the problem is just habit, ingrained habit. But remorse to me is something of the heart. And remorse is a very important part, hidayotapa, of our human consciousness. If we don't have remorse, of course, we're monstrous. But when you begin to really awaken to the feeling that you have when you've hurt someone, when you said something which is cynical or mocking or downright like a put down and so on, if you walk away, if you're really sincere, and I go back to sincerity, if you're really sincere about your own life, you'll say, where was that coming from? And you'll feel remorse. Now remorse is a healthy thing, but usually people take remorse into guilt. They hate themselves for having done something which they perceive as not sincere, not good, hurtful. Now, if you go off into thought, you're not really with remorse anymore. You're with thinking. So remorse is a feeling, and it's a feeling in the heart. And what I found is that if I say something unskillful to someone and I'm coming from a heedless place, I go back to my kuti and I don't feel good. I feel the remorse in my heart. And my habit had been to go into thinking, either hating myself or figuring out how I'm going to do forgiveness. And I realized I was not really being aware of remorse. So I recalibrated my practice. I said, no, you have to stay with the heart. Stay with the heartfelt feeling of having hurt someone. And if I did that, and I do that, hopefully not too often I have to do that, but if I go to that, then it's actually it's not a feeling I want to stay with, because it has this unpleasant quality of I've just hurt someone. But what it does, if I stay with it, it opens into love, because it is love. Remorse is a kind of love. Love of the good, love of compassion, love of not hurting someone. If I don't stay with that and I go to thought, then there's the ego again. There's the becoming. There's the guilt. If I'm not sincere, then it doesn't really matter. I just hurt people and walk away and say it's their problem. Well, that's another issue. But most of us are sincere. Most of us feel that we don't want to hurt anyone, yet we do, inadvertently, habit, whatever it might be. So to me, that's a very important moment. That moment of pain in the heart is very, and that's what I'm thinking of the broken heart. It's not like super broken heart, but it is felt in the heart. Now, if you have an embodied sense of that chakra, of that center, of what that feels like when there is compassion, what that feels like when there is joy, what that feels like when you can relate to your grandchild or whatever, if you've embodied that and witnessed that and so on, then it's opposite. Having hurt someone will be very loud there and very significant. And if you listen to that, that will take you deeper into love, and you'll not do that again. You won't do it as strongly. Vice versa. If someone does that to you, if someone insults you, says something to you which is inappropriate and hurtful, and it happens on the street, happens in family, that hurts. That really, really hurts. It's the same program. You go back to your kuti, and then now you feel that hurt. And then what will your thinking do? Your thinking will go to revenge, or how you're going to tell them really where they're at and really sort really sort them out and tell them, and then they can never do that again. Or you'll never speak to them again, or blah, blah, blah. And the mind will create a sense of self and other. But if you stay with the hurt feeling, and this is what I mean by the broken heart, if you stay with that, that will also take you to love, because you're hurt now. And you don't want to stay with that because it hurts. And so we go out into thinking and so on. So I find the more I can stay with the background, and then notice that within the background, there are very interesting objects. There's the breath. There's the sound of silence. These are part of reality. They're not constructs of my opinionated mind or my thinking mind or my Buddhist mind or my Buddhist opinions. It's not that. I'm not thinking. And then I go to the heart and I feel that. I feel that when someone people are very kind to me. I'm a very lucky guy that way. Very, very kind and very generous. So I feel a lot of goodness which comes to me. And I just try to just sit there, feel that, appreciate that. And then I'll have a memory maybe that comes up of having been hurt or mocked. Where's that? Where's that? That's here. Now take that to thought. And so I find that the more I live in the heart, then that becomes a kind of interesting mirror to the thinking mind. So the thinking mind is my habitual fallback position, go-to place, and it's not very skillful. Thinking is habitual for me, and it goes into worry or into planning or fantasy or resentment or whatever. But if I just try to sort that out with more thought, it gets me nowhere. I start to think about how I can put an end to thinking, but it doesn't really work. But if I go to the heart and I start to abide with the heart, then the thinking mind becomes very, very obvious. That is an object. That is an object. Don't believe in it. And so the kind of sense of ego that's created through thought, through all its dynamics that comes up, begins to be known as an object, not because I've tried to get rid of thought, not because I've done something to get rid of it, more because now I have another place of abiding. So I just like to share what I do, my hobby, as it were. So what I try to very much to do is to like notice thinking, how it affects the brain. What does the face feel like? What's the pressure in the temples? What do the eyes feel like? Get really a lot of body awareness. So when thinking arises, it's also got this component of bodily awareness. Yeah, there's thought, there's pressure in the brain, the eyes are tight, there's tension in the jaw, whatever. And then I just try to bring it down, feel my throat. What's the throat feel like? And if there's some emotional component, then the throat starts to feel tightness and openness and yawning and things like that. And I try to bring it down to the heart, bring it down. But I'm not like focusing, trying to do some kind of samadhi practice. I'm just exploring the body awareness. What's the body feel like? What does the body feel like when it's happy, when it's sad? And so this is a reality. This is not a construct, a Buddhist construct. It's a reality. And as I abide with the heart, I find that's a place of wisdom. Actually, I can respond to people in a much more wise way when my attention is resting here. When it rests in thought, yeah, it's useful and so on. But oftentimes it's very diluted and its perceptions are warped by my family histories or whatever. It's not oftentimes, don't trust that. Don't trust the thinking mind. So sometimes I've been through periods of just working through, as Luang Por Sumedho too, like through resentments coming up. And the voices of resentment, they're very real in some sense, but they're lying. I should do this and I should do that. I'm not going to forgive them. But no, what's the heart feel like? It feels like this. So you have this, like in thinking of Luang Por's own practice, he has that great sense of, I shouldn't talk, I should let him speak for himself. But for my sense of it, he has that great sense of openness and silence and emptiness. He loves the Akasa meditations. But then he's used things like the sound of silence, yoga, to ground himself in reality. So in offering something to Luang Por, do you get a sense of when he's talking about the unconditioned? Do you have a sense of that? Do you have a sense of something that's not an object? Have you got that insight? The unconditioned. What is not conditioned? Awareness. Is awareness yellow? Is awareness salty? Is awareness Singaporean? Is awareness male? Is awareness female? Is awareness 77 years old or 32 years old? None of those, right? It's ridiculous to say awareness is yellow. Awareness knows yellow. Change it to green. Awareness knows green. 77-year-old body, 90-year-old body, 32-year-old body. Is awareness 32 years old? It knows 32-year-old body, but it's not 32 years. It has no age. When you think you're born, when you think you're 90 years old, it's already a problem. So that, to me, it seems so fundamental to entering into the kind of teachings that Luang Por Sumedho, Luang Por Cha, and the Thai tradition of Puru, be the knowing, is pointing to. If you understand that, if you get that, if you have a glimmer of that, then you'll see how very difficult it is not to get caught up in objects, not to get caught up in self-identities and all the rest of it that we get caught up into, to the thinking mind. So then you start to mature in the practice and you start to question, what is it about my conditioning? Where does the sense of self always get grounded into objectivity, into being a person. Let's say it is resentment. You notice that actually 50% of my thoughts are resentful. Now you're starting to be aware of the problem. And the problem is not the resentment, it's the attachment identity with resentment. Then you start to see what Luang Por is saying when he says, trust and awareness, trust and awareness. So resentment comes up, but now, okay, I've got to, I want to work on this resentment for the next 10 years. Give it time. So then the resentment comes up. You say, resentment is like this. It's changing. And you witness it, and you witness it, and you witness it, you witness it. And this is why Luang Por is saying, trust and awareness. Just trust and don't trust the analytical mind. Just trust and awareness. Know it as it is. And if you can trust in that, then what happens is, as I was saying in the talk last time with this group, is the anusaya, the latent tendency, the kilesa, they begin to just have no more fuel. You're not fueling them anymore. Upadana, the word for attachment, is also the word for fuel. So if resentment comes up and I can't witness it as an object, and I fuel it with thought, or I try to get rid of it with distraction, it won't end because I'm refueling it. That's attachment. But if I know resentment's like this, anxiety is like this, and I do that religiously, day in and day out, minute upon minute, then that's a huge practice we can offer Luang Por. I'm gonna take responsibility for the anxiety rather than just thinking anxious thoughts. I'm gonna take responsibility for whatever, doubt or whatever. These are objects. And then you see how profound Luang Por's practice has been, where he's taken that simple paradigm, that simple model of awakening, knowing the way things are, and trusted in that. Trust, 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 trust. What doesn't trust is craving. Craving doesn't trust, it wants something else. So if you're sitting with a feeling of remorse and regret, you're sitting with your heart, craving mind won't want that. It will want to get rid of that through self-hatred, through distraction, through food, anything, but feel the pain in the heart. But if you sit with the pain in the heart, that's when you start to say trust and awareness. Just trust. No, just trust this. Go to that feeling, go to that feeling. Go to the broken heart. Luang Por Chah would say, when you've cried 3 times, you might have some wisdom. When you've cried 3 times, you might have some wisdom. And it's true, when something really impacts us like that, and I'm not hoping for anyone having any grief in this life. I hope you're happy all the time. Nothing ever happens wrong. But if it does happen, what to do? What to do? Where can you go? You can go to distraction, but most of us have done that. It doesn't work. You can go to thought. Does that really work? Or you can go to the body and witnessing and awareness. And it's like this. And then witness change. So to stay with the heart, sometimes it's not easy. So you develop the heart in other ways. In ways it is easy. You bring up, like you bring up the memory of someone you love. One of the things about this monastery for me has always been that there's always been a subtext for me, and that's my mother. Because before my mother died, she said, she lived to be 97. And she said, she couldn't figure out why she lived so long. She was definitely past her use-by date. And she was ready for an exit. And yet she lived to be 97. She wasn't partying, so she was ready to go. And that in the last year of her life, she said, maybe the reason I lived this long is so you could build that monastery. And that's always touched me very, very deeply. And so I use that memory, and I use my mom's picture. And I talk about this a lot because it's a kind of subtext in my life, and it's the subtext of the open heart. within all the kind of organizational things that I do and such like, always that reference, the open heart, is terribly important for me. And I try to revive that in all kinds of ways. But it's very simple, actually. It's the open heart. And then as I do that, and I live my day, then when the heart closes, oh yeah, that's that other feeling, into resentment or worry, whatever it might be. Then return to the open heart. And that's actually quite simple. And then my conversation with the world, when it comes from the heart, seems to be much more appropriate, seems to be much more, it doesn't have any echoes of regret or remorse. It seems to be much more accurate. It seems to be wise from there. From my head, not very good sometimes, and getting worse as I go, as I get older. So these are things I do, and the subtext is my mother, but the subtext is also my gratitude to Luang Por. How can I honor my teacher? And what would he want from me? He want me to be happy. He want me to be liberated. And if I can offer him that, surely that is what any teacher wants, right? That's what you want for your kids, right? You want your kids to be free from suffering, and that's what our teachers want. And so Luang Por wants for us the very best, the very highest, the very most noble. And his offerings now are so profoundly good, so profoundly good. So I offer that for my teacher. They won't.
อันธมยามโอวาดากถาสาธุการังคตามาสิสาธุสาธุสาธุอนุโมทามิ
Any questions for anyone? Michael Zito, how are you? We'll see you soon. All right. I'll be in the airport in Toronto, so look for me.
We'll see you both. Thank you.
Okay. Look forward to it. Questions, anyone? Comments?
Anyone with questions or comments? We're very grateful to Luang Por Viradhammo for sharing such deep and heartfelt reflections on Luang Por Sumedho. He's a great being. I had the good fortune of spending the last weekend with him, so I can fully appreciate what you said, Luang Por. Yeah. Anyone's got any reflections? Any comments?
Any complaints? We do it all here. But there's no refunds. Okay.
Anyone?
Well, should we chant the sharing of blessings through the goodness?
Yes, Luang Por, but can we add in an extra chant today? Can we do the Buddha's words on loving kindness first before the sharing?
Sure. Yeah, we have a group here. Buddha's words of loving kindness, and then sharing.
Yes.
Got that up on the screen?
Coming up. Okay.
You'll mute everyone else, and we'll chant from here. Okay, Beta?
Yes, Luang Por.
Okay. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety, May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none treasure or wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with the boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. And verses of sharing and aspiration. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, and through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana in every kind of birth. May I have an upright mind, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble guide. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled. Okay, everyone, nice to be with you. Oh, there's some flowers for Luang Por. Very nice. Yeah, think of him, inspire your mind with his teachings, and be free. Okay.
Let us all now offer gratitude to Luang Por Viradhammo, who's led us in a very special gathering today of the global community, by paying respects by chanting Araham. Araham Sama Sambuddho
Just bow 3 times.
Buddham Bhagavantam Avivademi Swakata Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Subhadipano Bhagavato Savata Sangho Sangham Namami.
Hey, everyone. Don't worry, be happy.
Thank you, Luang Por. Be well.
See you
Bye-bye.
next time. Ciao.
See you
Bye-bye.
next
Namaste.